Let's stay on that one and go to Solon, Ryan. Let's stick with the cross country here, and then we'll finish up with the volleyball conversation later on in this podcast. But let's kind of piggyback Clear Creek with what Solon did at WaMaC in that meet. And you talked about Hayden Barker, senior Kirsten Conway from Solon. Great story. Kind of a kid that's kind of just climbed the ladder steadily.
Yep.
I remember interviewing her when she was a freshman out at Kickers, and she was kind of wide-eyed, and now she just looks determined and has that focus in her face. But the Solon boys and girls swept that WaMaC meet, and we talked about how strong that field was. With that in mind, last week was the best week for Solon cross country since when?
I asked Emmy Williams that. She sent me some historic stuff. I could find history back to like 2014 just online, and she sent me a little more stuff. I'm not a historian on any of our teams. I rely on our coaches, but I think that's maybe the best week for them ever, combined programs. And you're talking about a girls program that really has a history of medalists and doing well at state and everything, but we talked about it last week, and I won't go over. We're both old newspaper guys. You love a good story, right? In their boys team, part of what I was able to figure out from talking to Emmy, they hadn't been better than they were third at that meet 3 years in a row. Last time in 2011, and since 2011 they hadn't been better than sixth, and they were 12th back-to-back years in. They were 12th back-to-back years, and then the last 2 years, they were 7th. So, I mean, they're 7th at that meet last year, and they come into it this year with 2 other top 5 teams in their class, and they win it by 17 points. I mean, that's the type of stuff that even with improvement, Rob, and we talk about that, stuff like that just doesn't happen in sports all that often. I mean, you don't just get that much better in a year. They had 5 kids. All 5 of their scoring guys were in the top 15. Didn't have a guy in the top 7. Gabe Hinman, or in the top 8, in the top 6. Junior Gabe Hinman was 7th, and then they went 10, 11, 14, 15. I mean, that's how you win, and so really, really impressed by their boys team. I already was, and we talked about that last year and the improvement they'd made. But I said last week I thought they could contend to be on the balcony at Fort Dodge. This was, they lost to Pella, who's ranked 2nd by a point, I think, or 2 points, and they beat Marion once by a point or 2. I mean, they were they were the best team, by a wide margin on Saturday, or excuse me, on Thursday. So really impressed by them. And then their girls, they've been runner-up at that meet. I think all the girls, as I asked the girls and Emmy, like, they said it just seemed like they were runner-up at that meet every single year. They won it. I went back and I was able to find that. They won it in 2012, and they'd been runner-up 4 times since then. So, and you mentioned Kirsten Conway. She was runner-up, I believe, or she was top 10 her first 3 years. Like, she was 8th and 4th maybe, because Adriana Catcher from Center Point Urbana had won it the previous 4 years. She was a 4-time WaMaC champion, and you watched her at state, one of the best runners in the state, just incredible. But Kirsten was, that was one of the things that Emmy said when I interviewed her afterwards, is you coach for a long time and you're happy for a lot of kids, but I don't remember exactly how she phrased it, but it's one of the happiest she's been for a kid. Just, she ran a school record time, ran 9:15, just kind of dominated that race, especially the last 2 miles. And then
I was looking back at my still photos of her, and it just, every photo of her face was just like dogged determination. She was not going to lose that race.
She had a great comment to me beforehand, and it's fun to watch kids, like you said, when you interview them for the first as freshmen, and then you interview them, when they're seniors, just how much more comfortable kids get talking and everything. But she told me right away, she's like, some days you just know it's your day. And she's like, and I just felt so good. And Emmy said something similar, where she said, she was a couple hundred yards from the start, and yelled at her, and she said they just locked eyes, and she just kind of nodded like she knew what she was saying. And she just, and that course, a lot of people that are listening to this, if you care about cross country, you were probably there, or that course. Rob and I had never been there, and we were kind of trying to figure out, talking to one another, trying to figure out, there's a lot of twists and turns, and a lot of back and forth. it's more winding. A lot of courses end up being essentially a big circle, big oval with a couple, you go around a couple things, you go around the tennis courts, or you go around this, or you go around the baseball field. And Williamsburg's a little bit different. And so I saw her, what I'm gathering is at about a mile, Rob, and I was standing by you, and there was 3 or 4 girls, and they were all kind of right there. Yep. And I walked around that building to get a different view, and I saw her probably again in 3/4 of a mile, and she had probably 20 yards on everybody else. And then the next time I saw her, it was probably like, 30 or 40. I mean, she just kind of took over at about the halfway mark, a little bit before the halfway mark, but they were really impressive again. And we talked about this last week, and I'll end with this on cross country. I had to look at my notes. 7 girls, all 7 of the girls that ran varsity for them finished in the top 21. And I just don't think people understand. I mean, at any level, like stuff like that happens sometimes when you have a dominant team, really dominant team at some level, but I'm not saying it's never been done, but that is just, I think the way that the WaMaC does it is the top 25 finishes are all conference. So they had a third of the top 20 essentially was from one team.
Yeah, it's impressive.
Stuff like that just doesn't happen. I mean, to not have 1 or 2 girls that are, and then I should throw in also when I got the results sent to me as a PDF, I had to scroll through the JV results to get to the boys varsity results. And I looked, and Solon finished 1st and 2nd in the JV girls race. And I saw their times, and I thought, man, those times are really good. How would they compare? Those girls would have been 26th and 27th in the varsity race. So they had 9 girls that would have been right at being all conference. Yeah. And I mean, that's really, I think, is worth noting for a team that, I mean, they had 2 girls that run JV that technically aren't even in the consideration to be all conference, and would have, one of them, I think maybe it was 25th and 27th. I can't remember, but they both would have been right there to be all conference runners. So that's the type of team they have this year, and why I think they have a chance, at Fort Dodge, assuming you got to get through this week and weird things happen in the sport, Rob. You have one day where you cramp or something bad happens, but they got to get through. And they actually have a incredible district or state qualifier on Wednesday where they're with Dubuque Wahlert, who is number 2 currently, and then Davenport Assumption, who I think 6th. So be another really good test for them to see kind of where they're at, the girls program at Solon. But somebody from Solon correct me. I would love to hear that. I would love to hear the history. I think that stuff's cool. But on the 7 Nation podcast, we're gonna throw it out there right now, Rob. Last Thursday, best day ever for the Solon cross country programs overall. Sweep in the WaMaC championship. I'm assuming that has never been done by them, their boys and girls, the individual titles. So we're going to go ahead and call it the best day ever. And hopefully, they have 2 more days here in the next couple weeks that are even better, at the state qualifying meet in its state. That would be amazing to be able to take that distinction away. But as of now, I'm going to blame Rob. Rob's saying that this is the best day ever for Solon cross country.
Yes. And like you said, hopefully they can top that. Both teams are 4th and 3A, and then Wednesday in Monticello is the state qualifier. So good luck to the Spartans.